little pouch.
Wow.
This little pouch,
yeah.
and within this little pouch, you open it up, and there are the earbuds.
Oh my goodness!
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
Like
We've got
some
people
weird,
in here now.
I mean, this
it's
is the
just
real
bizarre.
stuff. Why are we talking about managed services? Let's just watch
This is
Pete
cool.
opening boxes every week.
Welcome to Behind the Geeks, where we have now shifted away from MSPs and talking about MSPs across to unboxing earphones. As Pete is, as you would have just seen, as we would just click the go live button, then he's been getting sent all of these earphones and phones and all sorts of swag from vendors that want him to go and talk about it on his YouTube show. And this one that he was showing us was absolute mayhem. It was like about 17 layers deep that he had to unbox this thing just to find a tiny little set of earbuds in there. They'd better sound bloody good, Pete. Have you used them
really
yet?
cheap. I think they're like $80 headphones or something. I would say really cheap. I mein, in terms of headphones, they're quite affordable.
$79 worth of packaging.
Yeah, $79 worth of packaging.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to Behind the Geeks. Sorry, what was that, Richard?
Should we get started proper then?
Yeah, well, let's get started. There's people on here that we probably need to serve in some way, shape, or form. So welcome to Behind the Geeks. I am joined by Mr. Scott Riley, Mr. Richard Tubb, and Mr. Pete Matheson, the serial unboxer. And tonight, I don't know what we're talking about because we were too busy watching Pete's bloody unboxing his things and then getting ready. So, guys, what were we talking about tonight?
I think we were digging into Scott's latest issue, wasn't it? Of how do you what was the question?
How to remove yourself from the business when you don't have any money.
We know what we're doing.
I think the quick answer to this one is start a YouTube channel and get sent free stuff because it's like, that's quid's in.
Exactly. So tonight's topic was, how can you remove yourself from the day-to-day, at least in your MSP, when you got no money? And it's a challenge that Scott's got in there at the moment. And so we've all gone through, like Richard, Pete, and myself have gone through the whole journey of starting your MSP by yourself and being the only person in your business, all the way to getting it to the point where you're not required in your business so much, and if at all. And so we've all of us, I'm sure, have made a billion mistakes along the way. We all traveled different journeys as we went through that process. We all got to different points in there. We've probably got some ideas that we can share. But my first question, whenever I hear this and someone says to me, I'm a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 person shop or whatever, and I need to get the business running without me. And my question back to them, and this is a question that I wish I was asked back when I was trying to go through the same process, is why are you trying to do that right now? Can the business really needs a leader right now? And unless you've got the budget to go and buy and pay for a CEO, which you're not going to at a 3, 4, 5 person shop, then you need to be the CEO. You need to be the person that's in there as a CEO role, providing the leadership and the vision and getting some excitement around the business. And so I feel a lot of people try to get themselves out of their business too early, and then it means that they're taking the foot off the gas of growing what could be an amazing thing that they've got there. And I feel a lot of the time it happens. In my instance, it happened because I got burnt out a couple of times in my business. And that was when I was trying to pull myself out of it. In the Tech Tribe at the moment, I'm loving what we're doing in the Tech Tribe at the moment. So I don't want to pull myself out of the things that I love working on. And that's what I feel like people have got to either get to that point where you love what you're doing and you're working on it with so much energy that you're what's making the business thrive and get through this stage that you've got to get through to get to the point where you do have enough money to perhaps bring in an external CEO or whatever.
Should we tweak the question slightly then?
Yeah.
So I think the feedback that we got from people is not so much that they're trying to completely remove themselves from the business, although in Scott's case, you probably are to a degree, aren't you? But even with you, Scott, maybe I'm speaking for you. I think most people are looking to remove themselves from the role they started with, which is traditionally the technical role. So perhaps it's more about they want to remove themselves from the day-to-day so they can focus on the stuff they know they should be doing, but are not doing, like marketing, sales meetings, business development. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, totally. It's that classic working on the business, not in the business, right? It's when we do the the Michael Gerber E-Myth Revisited, and we plot out the business and all the roles and all the seats. And you realize when you start the business, you kind of sit in all those roles to start with. And Pete, you made a LinkedIn post yesterday about exactly this. Like, you sit in all those seats. And as you bring people in, you fill people in those different seats and those different responsibilities. But there are still things that you, as the founder, as the owner, end up doing that you probably shouldn't be, that just someone else is going to be better and quicker and faster at it than you are. And, like, if I take simple things like invoice reconciliation, because I had access to the Xero and I had access to the bank accounts, there's me on a weekly basis doing all the ins and the outs and the puts and the takes. And in the end, I'm like, this is it's just a waste of my time. It's 4 or 5 hours a week that I'm wasting just faffing around with invoicing. And I just spoke to our accountant. I said, look, and I'd never heard of the term. I'm like, is there any way you can do this for me? And she goes, yeah, we do bookkeeping. Do you want us to do bookkeeping? I'm like, yes, that sounds like something I want. How much is it? I don't know. It's like £10 an hour or something. Yeah. Ooh, shut up and take my money. Just go do that. Right. Because it frees me up. And the reality is, like, sometimes I sneak back in and I'm like, well, I'll just put this receipt in. I've been to Costco and I bought some, stuff for the office, and I'll put it in and I'll file it. And then I get an email the next couple of days going, you did it wrong. We don't pay VAT on these items. What are you doing? Leave my finances alone. And I'm like, oh.
As one of my team said to me, Scott, stay in your own lane. Only she said it a little bit stronger than that. In fact, she's on the call this morning. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like you've hired me to be good at this. Like, stop messing around with it. And I think that's what I was thinking when I was thinking of this topic. Is it's how do you kind of extract yourself from day-to-day ops so that you can focus on, like you said, Nigel, the stuff that you really enjoy, but also the stuff that's really gonna, turn the needle for the business. It's really gonna, keep it moving and keep everyone enthusiastic about what we're doing.
I think the stuff that I focused on specifically around that, I guess, is spend the time up front to automate as much as you can do. So, like, from the point, yes, you've handed it over, but we'd look at Receipt Bank or Dext and those kind of tools to do as much as you can so that you fire an invoice in and the invoice ends up in there automatically anyway. And then it ends up in your Xero in a stage where it just needs to click, the green, reconcile button. And that's kind of it. It's already in the right supplier. The amounts are all there and everything. And then I guess in terms of actually and then once you've handed it over, there was this thing I picked up from, I think it was the Entrepreneur Circle, of the 90 minutes, like do your 90 minutes every day. So the whole working on the business and in the business. And I did this from very, very early days with running my business, of the first 90 minutes in your day, even like come into work an hour earlier. So, I come in from 8:30 to 9:30. It doesn't sound like it's too early, but 8:30 to 9:30, or sorry, 8 to 9:30 for 90 minutes. That would be my door is closed, my email's off, my phone's off. I'm working on the business, on things that will push it forward, whether that's going to be creating new products or working on lead gen material or just something that's pushing things forward and taking us in that right direction. And then after that, then you get into the day-to-day and down in the weeds and doing all the kind of, the day-to-day kind of grinding stuff. But just using that 90 minutes every single day, that basically gives you over a week a full working day's worth of time to work on the business, like extra that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So we used it before for we need a new website. This is very, very early days. We need a new website. I spent 90 minutes every morning for a couple of weeks or 2 or 3 weeks or so, and we had a new website that came out of it that I wouldn't have otherwise found time to do if I was just doing it day to day and not focusing my time on that. So I think that's always a really important thing for everyone that's scrambling around, or one-man bands. Try and find that time. It doesn't have to be in the morning. It can be in the evenings if you feel like you're most productive in the evenings. But I just find the time that works best for you. Just completely switch off and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do today or this week or this month, and I'm going to do it. That I found really, really powerful because it just stops you getting distracted. Like, tell your staff not to interrupt you. Like I say, close the door, close your email, turn off all distractions, and just do that one thing.
Cal Newport refers to it as deep work, doesn't he? The idea of just focusing, because the biggest challenge for MSP owners, I think, is the switching in cognitive load. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're working on something, say if you're working on your website, as Pete says, then somebody knocks at the door and says, or taps you on the virtual shoulder, hey Pete, how do we do this? And you're like, and it might take 30 seconds, but it probably takes about 15 minutes for you to get back in the flow. So in his book, Deep Work, Cal Newport talks about, blocking off this time to create content, to do whatever you need to do. Switch the phone off, lock yourself out. I know some people who have got, I'm in the studio garage at the moment, and I know some people who've got their little studios or offices, and they've got an on-air light, a big red on-air like at the BBC. In other words, do not disturb me because I am working on something. You don't have to actually be on air. I know other people in shared office spaces, people like me who get really distracted by the hubbub, putting earphones in, which is an agreement with the people around you. Do not disturb me. I am working on something. And as long as you come up after a 90-minute period, 25 to 90 minutes or whatever of that deep work, it's fine. There's nothing that can't wait for 90 minutes, is there?
We had a similar thing even with our staff when they were trying to focus on something, just with the whole headphones thing, just pop some headphones on, earbuds, whatever it is, just whether you have anything or not, just turn on noise cancellation and just like have nothing. Just put them in, and then you can get on with things. And there's very, very little distractions. That's why mobile phones are so bad, because someone's tagged you on Facebook. Oh, this has happened on Instagram. Just turn it over, switch it off, like put it to one side, out of reach. And it makes such a huge difference to have that.
And if you can't afford earbuds, start a YouTube channel like Pete, and you will get sent a ton of them.
Or ping me a message. I think I've got like 5 pairs of them at the
moment. Claire mentions, and so they're all great tactical things that we all need to be doing far more of. But Claire mentions a great thing in the chat there, that do you think a lot of the time that we choose to work in the business on things that we're used to and comfortable with because it's the default, or it becomes the default because we're comfortable with those things, versus working on the business things that sometimes are new to us, like marketing or whatever it happened, or leading a team, or hiring a bigger team or whatever. And I see that all the time, even myself and in everyone, in that we look at some things and go, like I know I need to work on that, but it's just easier to do this because I know that and I'm comfortable at that. And a lot of the time it's pushing yourself across that boundary to go and do the thing that's tough and it's new and it's a challenge. And I see that as a big part of this whole working your way out of the menial roles and up to the higher level things is just getting past that mindset side of things.
It's a brilliant
I think it's more pressure orientated, because when you're doing client work, you're constantly pressured to be responsive, do the thing as fast as you can, do it as best as you can, improve on things. And so I almost feel like it's a natural progression to go from, I must just carry on working in the business because that's to make it better, faster, stronger, more money.
There's always a ticket,
kind of thing. Without then scaling back and going, oh, hey, hang on a minute, look at the big picture. All the kind of stuff I'm doing for this one client to kind of make them happy. Yes, it's important, but actually the bigger picture of, does it drive the business forward? Is it going to help us grow? Is it going to, whatever you want to do with the business? So I feel a large part of that is going to be just maybe people just aren't aware of the fact that they should be working on the business, because most people just get dragged into day-to-day and it never stops. They turn up for work at 9 o'clock in the morning, open up their inbox and go, oh, there's another 30 tickets I need to get through. Let's start cracking through. And they just slam through the tickets and they don't ever think about everything else that's going on. Maybe they should be spending more time on the business and outsourcing and delegating and all those other kind of roles.
One of the biggest bits of feedback, Pete, you mentioned smartphones earlier, which is like scourge of the modern life. It's also one of the biggest technology enablers, but it's a double-edged sword. In one of the earlier chapters in my book that I wrote about, don't get up and reach for your phone. And I think like 98% of the population do, or whatever. There's a terrifying statistic that says like 40% of people look at their phone during sex. I'm like, people, come on. If ever there's a time you need to be mindful about something, it's this. But yeah, seriously, people say to me, oh, I have to look at and this is MSP owners, I have to look at the phone in the morning to make sure there's no bombs I need to defuse or emergencies. And I'm like, what? Like, what on earth could be happening at like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning? And if you are in that situation, if you're watching this, I'm not picking on you because I've gone through it myself. You need to put in place processes so that somebody else is doing that, rather than you having to look at your phone. And you don't have to look at your phone. There's an ego bit rolled up in this, I truly believe, as we've touched upon. But nobody should be looking at their phone first thing in the morning, because what happens, and we all know this, you look at your phone, you either glance at emails, and there's no such thing as glancing at emails, because as soon as you see a subject line, your brain starts to process it and go through it. Or you get a text message or a WhatsApp from a client or whatever it might be. What is happening is someone else is now dictating to you what you're doing today. When what you need to be doing is what Pete says, you need to be focusing on what you need to be working on, business development, the website, sales and marketing, whatever it might be.
So you've ruined the whole idea of people looking at their phones at inappropriate times. Pardon me, darling. The website's down again. I'm just going to forward this over to Dave. I think the other thing I like to do, actually, if you're in that kind of focus time, even if you're at your desk, is I mean, by default, I have all of my Teams and Outlook notifications disabled.
Yeah.
They're just disabled by default because I'll be in the middle of something, even if it's not like that 90-minute focus time. You're just trying to focus on something, and just like the little toast notifications that we get from Outlook. Hello, you've got an email. Bing bong, you've got an email. Boop, here's a Teams message. I have those all turned off. And I'll be working on something, and yet I even have the little red counters turned off on the phone wherever possible, so that when I want to look at emails, I don't go, hang on, that number said 5, and now it says 10. That's 5 more emails. I need to go and check. I try and have all that turned off as much as possible, so that when I'm doing what I want to do, I then go, right, I feel like I've reached a break point. Now I'll go and check in on emails, or now I'll go and check in on something else. And it just stops you being that reactive mode. I think, to Claire's point as well, like I love the working on the business bit. I love that, like, long-term planning, strategy, marketing, sales. What can we do to get the message out there? I love all that stuff, but it's also very ill-defined, as in it doesn't have like an end point. Whereas those tickets and those emails, they generally have like a right answer. Like, here's the answer, here's the thing, here's what we're going to do, let's fix it. So those are very easy to kind of check off and get that intrinsic fulfillment that you've achieved something. I've achieved a load of things here. When you take 90 minutes to 2 hours, or even a whole day to do strategy and brainstorming and thinking about marketing, you can come out with very little, but an idea of where you want to go. And then it needs more time and execution. And you can really feel like, well, I didn't do anything today that was valuable, versus, well, I ticked off a lot of tickets, and that's really, and I think that's just like the techie side of how my brain works. But I'm sure other people are the same. You just feel like you've ticked off a load of things, and you've done work.
It's busy work, I refer to it,
isn't it? Because technically, by you doing tickets, you've earned money, whereas you working on strategy haven't really earned any money by doing that.
Yeah.
You just got to turn those other strategy things into tickets, and then you get to tick them off.
Yeah.
And I say that jokingly, but I actually do that myself personally. And so everything
same.
that I work on, whether it's a bug that we're working on or high level strategy stuff, whatever, I typically have it as a task in there, so I can still get that feeling of ticking something as I do it. And I tend to, I'm not awesome at this, but I use it when I have to, where I eat the frog first. And you've probably all heard of I think it was Brian Tracy.
Brian Tracy came up, where you've got that thing that you need to work on, but you're putting it off and you're putting it off and you're putting it off. And it's the whole notion of doing that hard thing. That's the first thing you do in the day before you get into anything else. And I've used that for many, 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 many years incredibly well from time to time. I don't do it every day. I'm not perfect at it every day, but it certainly helps me get through those things that are the things that typically I need to work on, that aren't the day-to-day. They're the if you look at that, what's Stephen Covey's quadrant, isn't it? The four, the important and urgent and those things. And it's typically the important things, but not the urgent things that you have in that frog category as well. And getting them done, to me, first thing in the morning, is by far one of the best strategies I've ever had in my productivity. And then the rest of the day flows and feels so much easier when you get a frog eaten first thing in the day. Let's touch upon something.
Oh, sorry,
Pete. Go ahead, mate.
I was just going to add in there. So one thing that I often come up against, or when I speak to people, is they don't know what they should be doing. Which one should I focus on? Which one's more important? And they end up bouncing between them and not actually completing any of them, because they'll start doing one, then they get distracted, and think that one's more important next. They change to that one, then they bounce around. I'm a big fan of, just, if you don't know which one's which, just start at the top and just get through them. It doesn't matter which order, just do one. I mean, that sounds really wrong. Just do one, but just do one of the tasks and get on with things, because you can spend so much time procrastinating around. Oh, that's the most important one. Let's do that one. Oh, no, that one. You just get pulled left and right and center. So just focus on do one, then the next one, then the next one, and keep going. You'll never ever get to that end of the to-do list. Like, nobody ever does.
Your business will never be finished. Yeah. I'm looking. Lee in the chat said Thanks for joining us, Lee. My struggle is death by 1,000 cuts in the form of questions throughout the day from team and customers. Everybody's nodding at that one, Lee, because I still get it to a degree. The one thing I would say, we've tried this and it doesn't always work great. But, earlier I was saying about the headphones in or the on-air sign or something like that. What we've tried to do within our business to a degree is to have office hours, as they call it, which is like, okay, if you've got a question, I'm going to be available for 30 minutes or an hour, between 4 and 5. Save those questions up and come to me with it. Now, Lee says also, I'm learning to let people find their own answer. Absolutely. I learned this years ago. We've touched upon this in the show before. When a client phones you on your mobile phone, cell phone, 7 o'clock of the night, and you're sitting watching TV or you're with your family or whatever, I learned to always let that go to voicemail. Even if I was free to do it. Now, some of you might chafe against this and like, why? You've got to serve the customer. But what I then did was like 45 minutes to an hour later, I would phone back or text back and say, hey, sorry I missed your call. I was having dinner with my family. How can I help you? And they nearly always, like 99 out of 100 times, get back and say, oh, don't worry, I've found the solution myself. So there is something about letting people feel the pain to a degree. But the other thing I did there was to subtly, very gently say to them, I've got a life and this is out of hours, without saying, why are you calling me out of hours? So, that worked for me. So perhaps that can work a little bit within your business, Lee, sort of office hours.
One of the, no, you go.
So I had two answers to that question, I guess. Really, there was the first one was trying to educate staff to say when you come to me, bring the problem, but also try and bring like 2 or 3 potential suggestions.
That was exactly what I was going to say.
Think about it. And then more from like an account manager's point of view, or I guess even the engineering team, if it's going to cost me less than £100 or $100, just go and do it. Like loads of people were kind of going to, we need to do this. We've had this problem with this order. We've ordered the wrong thing. There's a restocking fee of £20. What should we do? It's like, it's 20 quid. Just get on with it and sort it out for the customer. Those kind of things. Sorry, carry on.
Nigel. Yeah. So no, the 2 points that I had written down here were those 2 exact points. And so we had in our business what we called a decision matrix around pricing or around that had a cost associated with it. And so in our business, the rule was if you can make a decision that has a potential impact to the business or the client or whatever it was up to this, or you can make a decision up to this amount. If it's over that amount, then I think we've posted this inside the Tech Tribe as a resource.
We have, yeah.
And then if it's over that amount, and below this amount, then you need to go get a peer review from one of your peers, not me. Go get a peer review from one of your peers. If it's then over that amount, then you need to go get approval from the service manager. If it's over a next amount, then the service manager needs to get approval by me. And that meant the decisions didn't come to me until they were like $5,000 per decision. And that was incredibly helpful. It took some time to get that thing put in place, and it never worked like 100% of the time because someone would always inevitably forget it, and we had to remind them and whatnot. But it worked really, really well. And that whole notion like that, I doubled down on that whole thing of pushing back on people like crazy to never come to me with a question. Always come to me when you've got a proposed answer, and only if you feel like your proposed answer you're not 100% confident in it, and it goes like there's something in our decision matrix or our escalation flow that's making you uncomfortable, then you can come to me. But never, ever come to me without that sort of stuff in place first. So we had to put those frameworks and those kind of bumpers and rules in place so people knew when to go and ask and how to ask. And we tried the office hours a few times and it worked pretty well. But I found like those other things worked well enough to the point where there would be days and days where I would go without being asked any questions in. And when I was asked questions, they were asked the right way, and they were things that had a big impact, and they'd already gone through the other levels first and whatever, which was awesome.
Nigel, were you a member of HTG back in the day?
I was.
Yeah. Did you ever come across the concept of the allowance?
No.
Okay, so I genuinely can't remember who introduced this to me. I know it was somebody in HTG, but AWOW, like an allowance, but it was basically they empowered people within their team. They had discretionally, let's just say it was up to $200. Basically, if they could make their clients' lives easier or add a +1, as we call it within my business, or, just the customer service type thing, they had the power to do that, and it was called their allowance. Now, I can't remember if it was $200 per month or whatever. But I really like that concept.
Right?
And it's very similar to what we talked about. Like Tim Ferriss talked about transforming his vitamin business when he just let go and said, look, if it's going to cost less than $200 to fix it, don't even check with me, just go for it. So it really works. But allowance, if anybody's watching this in the old HTG days, let me know who you were and I'll give you the credit for it.
Tony Hesh became famous for that in Zappos, right? Like his whole approach with Zappos is probably where that originated, or it wouldn't have originated from somewhere probably in the early 1800s or 1900s, but his approach made it famous out there. And it was typically on a per incident basis, not per month or per day or whatever. It's normally per incident, so that if you're dealing with a client scenario, or
$200 of donuts every meeting. Nick, you're speaking my language, my friend.
So we had, I mean, it wasn't called anything as cool as allowance, but we had wow moments. We should have totally taken that. And the idea was that if you can pick up on something when you're on the phone to like just your, when the engineers are on the phone to the clients, and I was like, someone was moving house or getting married or just things. It came off the back of the Fred Factor, the book called The Fred Factor.
Awesome book.
Just if you can find a moment where you can go, okay, cool, we can do something here, and it's just meant to make your client turn around and go, oh wow, they actually like listen, they actually care, they actually remember these kind of things. If you can find something, I remember someone caught a cold or had a flu or something, and the guys went onto Amazon to buy a flu kit. There was like a one of those men's flu kits or whatever they are, and they just literally Amazon primed it there the next day and just gave them a bit of a chuckle. It's just those kind of little moments that don't cost a huge amount,
Correct.
20, 30, 40 bucks per thing. And you're not going to find them all the day, every day. It's going to be these unique things where you can go, oh, actually, no, we can really do something here.
Yeah.
And I've heard of, I don't know if you guys have heard of like the Gary V moments of someone placed an order for like one bottle of wine. They'll ask them, some random question, and he'll stalk them on social media, find out what they love. And I think he sent them like signed like a Jets jersey or something, big sports team with a proper like cost them a few $100 on this like $20 order of wine or something. Yeah. And didn't hear anything back. And I think like 6 months or a year later, they had a massive order from somebody who said, oh, you've got my mate so-and-so this jersey. I quite like this team in the order on the basis that he would then be buying him a jersey as well. But he
buying him the jersey or the team if he's put in a large order, maybe.
So it's just trying to capture these moments where you can really make an impact and kind of make people kind of just step back and go, oh, hang on, my other provider, my old provider didn't do that. That's awesome. They really do like think about me.
There's an amazing book on that whole process called Giftology by a guy called John Rulin. And he's got a business that deals with that, like amazing corporate gifting and going out and finding the things like the jerseys or whatever it happens to be for people out there. And awesome book. If you haven't read it yet, highly recommend. You can knock it out in an hour. It's a bit of a sales letter to his business because his business does that stuff, like high-end corporate gifting. But it just the philosophy in there and the practical stuff that he shares in there is pretty bloody good. So
I think you're the best. I say this absolutely truly, Nigel. I think you're the best in the world that I've ever come across at this, and I know it'll make you blush. And you're also bizarrely somebody who doesn't like receiving gifts, but you are the person. You are the person that I know who has given.
I hate receiving gifts.
You've given the most touching gifts to myself and others that I've ever come across. And every time I speak to somebody at community groups or whatever, they will say, "Oh, Nigel sent me this," or "Nigel gave me that," and I totally get it because I'm sat here with an acoustic coupler.
That's right. Sent me. I remember tracking that one down.
I burst into tears when it arrived, and it was because it means so much to me. Yeah, I'm a massive geek. For Nigel, it was just a piece of metal that he managed to track down on eBay in America or whatever. But those things, as Pete said, that are super important to people. Yep. So thank you, public thank you, Nigel.
No worries. Can I do a humble brag of one of the cool ones that I came up with recently?
Of course you can.
I won't tell you who it's to, but we've got a friend that's like cybersecurity expert and loves everything about cybersecurity. And so I thought, and it was helping out the tech tribe like crazy. And it's like, what can I get this guy to say thanks that's going to blow their mind? And so I went, oh no, like where did the cybersecurity industry came from? It came from like back in the cryptographic days and whatever. Let me buy him an Enigma machine from World War II. So I didn't because I looked online and I went, okay, I searched buy Enigma machine and the responses are like $1 million and stuff. And I went, oh crap, like there goes that idea. But I kept searching and I found someone that was selling parts from an Enigma machine that had been dug out of a ground in Poland. And it was selling the rotors from it. And so I bought one of these rotors. It was like $600 and got it shipped to me, and then got it displayed in a nice display case, and it just said like, this is part of an original Enigma machine from World War II recovered in Poland. And sent that across to him in a display case. And when it came here and all got set up in the display case, my wife saw it and goes, "Holy crap, that's awesome!" And so I had to go back to the guy and say, "Do you have any more rotors?" And he had 2 more, so I had to go and buy 2 more rotors and got 2 more of those things made up. We've got one downstairs, and I gave one to someone else as well in the cybersecurity space, just as a thank you for all that they do. And I knew that they geek out on that kind of stuff, and it was kind of cool. There's no limit to the amazing different things you can buy for someone. And that's like, you've probably heard of the terms love languages, and people have got different love languages. Some love receiving gifts. I love giving gifts. Like, I love just coming up with cool things and just showing people appreciation and coming up with cool, funky ideas. And it does go a long way. We spend thousands and thousands and thousands, or probably tens of thousands each year on just showing appreciation to people when they help us out in some way, shape, or form. And I'm sure, we don't track it, but I'm sure it comes back in who knows what, 10x in different things. So
yeah, and loyalty. Look at the comments, the nice things people are saying about you, Nigel. So
Jorgensen says, I like Nigel because he'll go out of his way to make things right, even if it's a small issue. And that's important in this industry. And again, humble brag, we do that. We're very intentional behind that on our help desk, in that when we stuff up, like, our back end of our Tech Tribe portal system is highly complicated, and there's lots of moving parts, and we break things semi-regularly in there by doing things that double bill people or do something. And we don't just, when we do that, we don't just fix it and say, here's your refund. We'll go out, we make sure that we go and gift these people something to say, hey, look, we're so sorry that this happened. Like, we were trying our hardest to make it not happen, but it did. We're humans. Here's a little, we've given you a, whatever it is, it's never a gift voucher. It's always something that makes sense, like a nice book or something or whatever, just to apologize and do it. And I think just little token things like that, like you said, Pete, they're tiny little things, but they just go to create a wow factor. And that's an SOP for us to do that stuff. We do it as part of our, like, it's not a formal written SOP. We just do it because it's the culture of the business. We do it on every single time we break something or hurt someone or annoy someone or whatever. We try and go out of our way to make them feel like we're sorry. Essentially, that's probably the word I'm looking for. Right. Someone, what's this? Let's play. I'm just looking at our private chat here, and I don't get this one. Scott says, "Let's play Thermo-Global Nuclear War."
Let's see who gets that reference out there. Who would like a nice game? Who would prefer a nice game of chess to Thermo-Global Nuclear War? We'll put that one out there. Let us know in the chat if you know what on earth we're talking about and acoustic couplers. While we wait for the responses,
you bought him an acoustic coupler, Nigel. And
we'll explain in a minute, Nigel, what this is, that is.
Right,
but I want to see who in the IT.
I want to see if anybody else knows the reference.
I wanted to talk about something. You know, getting back to the topic of when you don't have any money within the business. Everybody has alluded to this. Scott has mentioned this earlier with his bookkeeping. You know, when he looked at it and he was like, "Okay, it's going to cost me £10 an hour or whatever to get my bookkeeping done." Scott, I'm going to take a guess. Your consulting time is worth significantly more than £10 an hour, isn't it?
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit. So I think the point I would make here is, you know, when you don't have any money, sometimes you've got to look at it and say, right, I'm going to invest the money in working with somebody. And we've talked about virtual assistants, admin assistants, outsourcing, those type of things. What would it look like if you invested the time and the money in getting somebody else on board and understanding that it frees up your time to go and either bill yourself at X amount, $100 per hour, or work on the business, which generates thousands or tens of thousands worth of revenue every day. So sometimes it's about the investment. We've talked about this a number of times, you know, realizing that your time is really valuable. And I think MSP owners can sometimes get wrapped up in, oh, I'm the only one who can do this. That's not the case at all, in my opinion.
But it's just, you know,
one thing that... Oh, go, Scott. Cool. That's fine.
I was going to say, the thing is, you'll often look at those things and go, oh, man, there's so much admin that's taking up my time, and I need to hand over that admin. I need someone to do the admin. And the traditional way of doing that is to go, well, let's go and hire an admin person. Okay. And in the UK, like, the minimum salary might be, I don't know, £17,000 a year. So you're like, okay, well, that's, you know, if I don't have a lot of money, that's an extra person that I need to bring in. Maybe that's full-time. Maybe I can bring someone in part-time. But then when I look at something like our bookkeeping, like I just had the invoice 2 days ago, and it's £145 this month is how much the bookkeeping has cost. Okay, I haven't had to look at the books. I haven't had to touch them. They're all in perfect order. It's £145. And that is literally, it's like 4 hours every week of my time just freed up. Well, that's a heck of a lot more valuable for me to have those 2 days, 2 working days back for £145. And they are better, faster, smarter at it than I am. And so I look at that with all the other things and go, right, where can I get someone to help with this? We have a HR manager who does everything we need for HR. And I'll be honest, we don't really need it that often, but when we need it, we need it. If we need policies or processes, or there's been a regulatory change thanks to the government, we pay £200 a month for a complete outsourced HR service. It comes with all of our, staff handbooks, contracts of employment, contracts for, if we get temporary workers or if we bring in apprentices, all of that stuff's covered. If we have any litigation or issues or problems, it actually includes an insurance policy for all of those kinds of things. Everything in there is covered for good leavers, bad leavers. We have everything covered. I don't have to think about HR. I couldn't possibly get a HR person or someone as skilled as this service that we get from that business for £200 a month, $2,500 a year. It's money that I look at and go, it's money well spent. We probably don't use it once in 6 months, but when we do use it, it's completely valuable. And we could never have a person in the business that is that good. So I just look around at all those different factors, all those seats on that org chart and go, right, we have people in there and it's costing us a fraction of what it would cost either for me to do it and get it wrong and the penalty of getting it wrong and how much it would cost in cash there, or to hire someone in, even if it was just an admin person, to try and half do those roles, but not as well as these individual specialists. And again, our whole thing is we go to businesses and say, hey, outsource your IT service to us because we are fantastic at it. And actually, it's probably better, faster, cheaper than you trying to hire a team to do this yourself. Well, duh, that's exactly what we need to do when it's stuff outside of our skill set, when it's legal and finance and all that stuff. That's where we should go and outsource. And that's how, as that kind of founder, owner, manager role for me, I'm trying to just keep dwindling away the things that I do. And I was chatting to Richard yesterday, and I think I said I have 2 jobs left that I haven't given to someone else. And both of them kind of involve having access to the bank account. And that's it. Once that's gone, I don't have any operational things that I need to do. My focus is chatting to customers and prospects and sales and marketing focus and running the business, leading the team, keeping everyone enthused and in charge and, keeping us all happy, looking after everyone. That's my mission. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to get going here.
Just to jump in on that bank account access thing, because I've come up against that actually on my new business as well as people I've been coaching. With the modern digital banks like Starling and Monzo and those kind of things, there's not the ability to give access to anybody that's not on the books on part of the company. Whereas I know with NatWest that we used to have with Lloyds Bank here in the UK, you can essentially create user accounts. You can create a user account, give them permissions, and you can then say, okay, they can schedule payments, but I need to approve them. Or actually, if you just want to completely hand over access, they can do everything, but they don't have a bank card. They don't have signatory, signatures on the account, those kind of things. Just in case people aren't aware of those kind of things exist, because most people I find are going towards Starling and the newer digital banks that don't yet have those kind of features in there.
There are third-party tools, not to jump too much into the weeds here, Pete, but I know Xero, for instance, I think that it's called Xero Pay or something like that, where you could delegate the ability for somebody else to say, yeah, pay this, and this bill, and it will automatically connect to Starling and go and do it for you. It's not quite the same as having access to the bank account, but that might be one that's worth looking into. So
I'm going to have a look at
now.
that
Now Googling that. Thank you, Richard.
This show every single week for anybody watching this live and thinking, what, they know all this stuff. We regularly say something and then the others are like, oh, I've never heard of that, and go and do it. So we get as much out of this show as hopefully everybody watching does.
It integrates with Wise. Okay, that makes sense. That's awesome. Great. I was going to throw in a couple of things there as well. So on I wrote some notes down. Recurring revenue. So yeah, in terms of I don't have enough money to do things. How do I pay for stuff? The biggest thing I think we had was, and most people ask me how did you grow your business? Recurring revenue was the biggest thing. You take on a few new clients that are paying monthly for whatever services are. then you can hire some staff, then you take on some more clients, then you hire some staff, and it's literally just rinse and repeat. So I think that's worth kind of pointing out for those that are maybe doing a bit more ad hoc work. Maybe Scott, because yours is very project focused as well. I know you're building the kind of subscription based thing you've got as well. But yeah, certainly when it's ad hoc, it feels a lot more dangerous to outsource and hire, because that income could disappear tomorrow because it's just a project. And what if the project doesn't come through? And every MSP has that kind of, and we had it too, as you've got that kind of base level of where your recurrings are kind of coming up to. And then for us, we're always trying to get that to be our, cover our operating expenses. So we know we're safe, that meets things. I don't think we quite got there, but we were always well above it once you add on the kind of professional services on top of that. And so we just had to try and guess of like, well, that's what normally happens in our kind of professional services and ad hoc work. So I think we can afford somebody on the basis that doesn't go away. But it feels very, very bad to do that, because you just think that, that literally you could just go through the process of no quotes get accepted that month you get no work. And now you've made a loss because you haven't got that professional services kind of top up that you always had. So I thought I'd mention that for one. And secondly, certainly around here at least, we have something called the Solent LEP funding. And everyone will have their own kind of individual kind of funding and grants and local councils and government things. But have a look to your local local government for any form of funding you can get, because places like the Solent LEP around here, you can apply, I think, for up to 50% of a project cost. Unfortunately, that means you can't use it to pay for staff, but you can use it to pay for capital expenses, like if you're buying gear or buying equipment or stuff or cars or whatever it's going to be. So you can actually get quite a lot of funding locally, providing you go through the motions and actually apply for it, which is a bit of fun from time to time. But it's well worth doing. You certainly, if you've got some big expansion plans, moving into bigger offices, you need to fit the office out. All those costs. At least 50% of that could be covered by some good.
What's a LEP, Pete? Is that like a local?
It's local enterprise partnership, I think it's called.
Got it. So it would have been like Business Link or back in the. Everybody's got one in their part of the world, though, haven't they? So whatever it might be called, but the LEP would be the local business development agency. So
correct. Yeah, and those things pop up, and they get funding rounds. So they might not have any now, but they might have some in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. It's always worth just like registering with them. And just subscribing to their newsletter or what have you, and just stay on top of things just in case they do come through.
Yeah, definitely.
Lee was saying here, and I think this probably rings true for all of you guys as well. It certainly did for me. Is up until recently, because he's in a really good spot in his business at the moment, because he's been putting in the hard work for some time. But previously, up until then, he was never able to financially afford a new role when he hired them. However, the business could not afford to not have them, and they always ended up making money. And I think that I don't know whether there's some sort of unwritten universal law that just comes into play here, that it just works out every time. You go and hire the person that you can't afford, and it either subconsciously kicks you into gear to make different decisions or better decisions in there. But I've never been in a situation where I've been scared of making a hire. I've made the hire and it's backfired on me. It's always turned out good when I've been scared of going and hiring someone, because it just, as I said, it kind of forces you. It's a forcing function on making good decisions around the other stuff that you work on, so that you end up getting the money in then.
Pete talked about it a bit last week, I think, didn't you? Or was it the week before, where you took a leap and sort of hired somebody? And then I don't know if you agree with this or not, Nigel, but like that old chestnut of like limitations breed innovation. So if you make yourself artificially, like instead of we want to sign 3 new clients, if you then take on the cost of a new employee, we have to sign 3 new clients, is a completely different kettle of fish. Yep. And you're forced forward. So going back to what we were saying earlier about productivity, and people in the chat, I noticed people talking about, well, I procrastinate about this, or don't do this, or don't do the other. That whole thing that Pete was saying about setting 90 minutes, I'm the world's biggest procrastinator. I set a 25-minute, what I call a Pomodoro. I put some music on, 25 minutes. I have to get the task finished in 25 minutes, and that limitation just breeds the desire, the urgency to actually get the work done. So there's that old adage, isn't there? The work will expand to fill the time available. You can get that to work for you if you cram it down and say there isn't that much time. You get the work done, and I've worked a 4-day week for many years now, and that works to that effect. So how
much of your work, like on a typical week, would you say that you use Pomodoros 50% of the working hours, 80%, 20%?
Yeah.
Like how much of your week do you?
It's a great question. For anybody
Pomodoro?
who's not familiar with what Pomodoro is, yeah, it's that little Italian tomato. That's where it comes from, but it means slice of tomato. So you can actually get Pomodoro timers, which are a little tomato that sit on your desk and you set them for 25 minutes or whatever. The whole point is, and answer to your question, Nigel, when I'm on a good day, I use Pomodoros for virtually everything.
The whole
And I
day.
have two Pomodoros. No, I have three Pomodoros. I have a 25-minute one, which is usually for admin and small writing tasks. A 50-minute Pomodoro, where I'm doing something a little bit deeper, and then the one I'm starting to add is the 90-minute Pomodoro, which is where I work on the deep work that you and I have talked about. So, in answer to your question, on a good day, so I had a really good day this week. It's Tuesday of this week. I did all day Pomodoros and then took breaks in between them. And I got a ton done. The Wednesday, not so much. So it's still a work in progress for me.
Do you force yourself to take the breaks even if you're in flow in those things?
No, not if I'm in flow, like with writing and stuff. But if I'm doing admin or whatever, there's always one more email to answer or one more whatever to do.
There is.
So I force myself to take the break at that point and go, right, get up, stretch, move around. Because it's so easy to just sit there and keep doing stuff. There's never ending. Your business is never finished, is it? So.
Going back to that moment of like hiring someone before you can afford them, technically, the same also I find applies if you kind of want to reward yourself, like have a holiday, like book Disneyland. Book Disneyland, pay the deposit, which is like 50 quid or something. It's going to be like something very, very small. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your staff you're going to go on holiday. Now you really need to do some work to actually pay for the holiday, even though you can't afford it yet. So I find those kind of things can be really, really good to just push you to do the work you need to do.
Oh, yeah. Yep, 100%. Lee asks, are we back to sex now? I think that was when we were talking about the 25 minutes there. But
no, Lee, what I would say to this,
90 minutes.
David Allen from GTD says, if you can get it done in 2 minutes or less, just do it right now. There you go.
That's Pomodoros in 60 seconds. 60-second Pomodoros. We are good. And Pete, so back to your, there was a point I wanted to add on to your one where you say, like, if you go and book the Disneyland trip in or whatever, and it then forces you to go and make the money, but it also forces you to go and focus on all the tasks in the business that require you still, and it makes you prioritize on them to go and get yourself out of them a whole lot more. And I remember going on my first trip overseas when I had my MSP. I imported a French girl out here and now married to her, where she wanted to go back home. And I'd never left Australia before, apart from a couple of conferences that were more work than anything else. And it was like, what, can I go on like a couple of week trip out of the country on a holiday from my MSP? And so we booked this thing in. We probably booked it 2 to 3 months in advance. But I completely changed the way I worked in that 2 to 3 months leading up to it. I focused very heavily on just getting everything off my plate that needed to happen in all the day-to-day stuff. And that was accounting stuff and admin stuff and ticket stuff and account management stuff and everything as well. And that became that forcing function for me, which was awesome. And then over the years, we ended up doing a number of 4 and 5 week holidays overseas. And before each one, I would be in this role. It kind of just pushed me into this role of just getting so much amazing stuff built and SOPs created and tasks delegated and admin assistants hired and all sorts of things in there. So if you're struggling, maybe Scott, it's time to just go and book in a holiday, go and come to Australia for 5 weeks and say you're not going to be working on the business. And then that'll force you to get rid of some of these other laggards that might be on the plate.
I think, is it Mike McCallowitz's book? It's not Pumpkin Plan, is it? Where they're talking about
this next, is it?
Possibly, yeah, that might be the one. And
actually,
it relates to what we've been talking about, and also relates to taking time off from the business and getting your staff to not ask you questions, because it just goes through the whole process of book a day's holiday, book a week's holiday, then 2 weeks, then a month, then like 4 months, and basically you keep booking holidays. You come back and revisit and go, okay, what broke, what didn't work, what were you waiting on me for? Let's fix that and figure out how we can automate that, or figure a way around it, and take another one and make it longer. And get to the stage where you're going to technically have 6 months off without your business and noticing, and your clients noticing.
Yep. That's the ultimate. Everything's got a season though that I find in business, and that's the ultimate is doing it that way. But I think there's also, you've got to be cognizant of the seasons that we are in a business, and sometimes we're in a building phase of our business, and you just don't want to take time off in that building phase. You just want to get in, and that's what I was saying before. You just want to get in and do whatever you can to get through this particular season, whether it's because you've got a load of opportunity that's untapped, or whether it's because you want to get a few things knocked out or whatever. I think doing that in conjunction with knowing the season that you're at in your business is a super awesome way to go through that process.
I think most startups just have that season for the first 5 years of business. And they don't take it off for years.
It's like a 5-year season, exactly. It is. But each business you start gets faster through that season. I've found.
Forgive me for speaking over. I was going to say Theo asked a really interesting question in the chat. He said, which roles that is, do you employ as opposed to outsource to? He says outsourcing is so much more affordable. I'm intrigued what people would say about that. Scott, you and I, we were doing a podcast interview. We were like scheduled for 50 minutes and ended up going like 2 hours, didn't we, yesterday, talking about this very subject. But you were saying about some things that outsourcing doesn't do as well, and you sort of are keeping internally to a degree.
Yeah. So, my simple answer is, outsource to wherever it's best served and most financially efficient for your business. And those can be two different things. You can outsource and you're making tons and tons of margin on a product or service, but it's absolutely dog awful and the customers hate it, and you're just printing money on the margin, but it won't last long. There's no lifetime value in it because the customers hate it. Or you can outsource to the people who are the best and brightest and maybe make slightly less margin, but you're still making margin for not doing anything. And that's how I look at, if I think about the guys we use over at Uptime for our IT managed service solution, they do a fantastic job, and we mark it up and sell it through as part of our good, better, best packages. We don't have to think about it. Now, again, this is always the contentious issue. Should you outsource your service desk? And people think that it's core to their identity and relationship. We don't. We think it's people who phone IT service desk want someone who knows what they're doing to fix the problem they've got there and then on the phone. And that's great service as far as they're concerned. Easy. But to Theo's point, when I think about what would we outsource, we would outsource anything that is not core to who we are and what we do. That's the stuff that we're absolutely niche specialists at, and we're trying to carve this path of being like the 365 and Azure guys. That's what we do really well. For everything outside of that, especially business operations, finance, legal, HR, we're not any of those people. So let's outsource those seats to make sure that we have someone who does a good job. And that could be an individual, or it could be like a service provider. Our HR is technically a service provider. We have one permanent named contact, which is Sarah. But whenever she goes on holiday, she's like, hey, I'm on holiday. Here's my colleague that you can contact while I'm away. But actually, if you can't get either of us, here's the main service line and someone will help you. So there's always someone in that service available. Uptime, it's a dedicated 5-person pod of IT providers, IT consultants who are going to do the break fix. So there's a different way of just thinking about, is it the thing that we are awesome at, that we manage the relationship with the customer through, and this really adds value to the relationship and we can help drive forward the business and the customer? Or is it just kind of day-to-day stuff that we just need the best person for the best price to do? And that's how we look at it. So that's why we've outsourced all of those things that I think some MSP owners might think are sacrosanct. I have to run service desk. That's me. Some business owners will look at it and go, no, I cannot possibly give access to the bank account. Oh, I can't give access to the finance system. I understand all those things, but are you the best person to do it? And that's why I've kept challenging myself to go, this doesn't have to be me. I don't have to do this. My guys don't have to do this. Let's find the right person at the right price. And if it's affordable and we can still make the margin, and they're genuinely the best people for the job, then they should do it. And Richard, you challenged me yesterday because when we thought about service desk, my initial point was, yes, there are many, many outsourced service desk providers, but I want one that's in the UK because my customers are in the UK. That's my primary focus. I want a UK-based service desk. And there are some fantastic service desks out in, the Philippines and out in the US, but I want a UK one. And that's why we ended up choosing Uptime specifically, and also because the great relationship and feeling that we got when we chatted to the team. But you challenged me yesterday, thing actually in this background of what we've just had with the shift in the workforce over the last 2 years. UK might not necessarily be the best place for these outsourced services. There might be absolutely fantastic people in other parts of the world now that are always available, on Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, that can do an amazing job, maybe at an even better price. And so we've got like the best people from anywhere around the world now, and they're doing the job. And that's the kind of thing that you challenged me on yesterday. So I would say genuinely right person for the job. And it used to be for me UK based, but now it's right person for the job wherever the heck they are. Who cares? As long as they are doing an amazing job, looking after the customers or the thing you're asking them to do, and it's a great price point. I will shut up for a second.
Chris,
I think that I struggle with when like outsourcing those kind of roles, and I think it does come down to like what are you good at? Like what's the thing that you deliver? Certainly for me, with like my service desk team, I wouldn't have. I mean, I considered it a lot of times, but I wouldn't ever outsource that role because going back to like the allowance, those kind of things, you can't really run those kind of things through outsourced teams. I guess it's personality. I feel like you just lose some of the personality if you start outsourcing, if they're customer facing. Yes, things like accounts can be outsourced, but I always again thought the bookkeeping and the chasing and those kind of things, you can still have your own kind of bit of personal spin on it and a bit of personality that you can have a bit of fun with it. I think that's the main thing. You can have some fun if you're doing it internally. Whereas if you just give it to somebody else, they're there to do a job and they're going to do it as efficiently as possible. Maybe not with that like personality kind of spin on it. So yeah, that was my other thought on terms of outsourcing.
Oh, I think you're right. I think picking those outsourced people is hugely important. And again, when we did service desk, it was very much around they feel like us. They we get on really well. We have a great rapport. I love the way their business runs. I love the people that are there. And we've just got this great feeling that if they're going to answer the phone as Cloud Nexus, it's going to feel like Cloud Nexus. That was one of the other big things as well, was just that relationship thing. It's going to feel like us. And you're right, Pete. It's really important. Otherwise, you can just be seen as, giving it to a fractional person who's doing a bit of stuff just because, we've got a bit of work for them and it's not interesting. They're not part of the team. So I still think there's a big difference between just kind of getting a fractional person, getting someone who actually feels like part of the business. And genuinely, I'd say for everybody apart from the HR, I think everyone feels like, that's our finance person. That's our service desk. It feels like us. That's been, a great experience that we've had with outsourcing.
Nice. Cool.
I'm just posting a note in here for the Richard asked to post a video of the War Games thing. And I think it was Lee who won mentioned War Games first back if I scroll a little bit further up.
Who else answered that? I think Chris at Jorgensen IT gets the acoustic coupler reference and thermonuclear global war. And how about a nice game of chess? We're going to send Nigel to look at the video clip afterwards so he can understand the significance of the acoustic coupler and what he sent to me.
I have seen War Games. Is it from War Games, is it?
Yeah, yes. With Matthew Broderick
in 1980. But in the 90s. And my memory,
you saw it 10 years after it was released. You need to go back and view it again.
Well, I couldn't see it when it was released. I was 3 years old. I wouldn't have bloody had a clue what was going on.
It came out in, what was it, 1983, I think it came
83,
out.
Yeah, I just had a look here, 83. So I was 3 years old. I would have watched it sometime in the 90s. I do remember seeing it. I have no recollection of what was in it, though, and I've heard of it talked about many times since then, so I'm going to add it to the list and go and watch it again.
If you are working in cybersecurity and you've not seen War Games, go and check it out.
Hackers was my favorite movie from back then.
Yeah,
that was
awesome.
the one that kicked my... I still listen to that one song from Hackers, or there's one song from Hackers. Every time I'm on a plane, I always listen to that one song. And it's
Opus 3, It's a Fine Day.
No, that's close. Halcyon and On by Orbital.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's when he's sitting on the plane with his headphones on, going along. And every time I take off on a plane, it's kind of my ritual that I'll put that song on. I've had it for years. It's a crazy little ritual, but I love that movie. The old young, what's her name? Not Jennifer. Brad Pitt's ex-wife.
Aniston.
Angelina Jolie. That's the one.
And
but anyway,
we should probably wrap up.
Thank you, Pete. You're the wrap-up man. You can kick us all into gear.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks as always for joining us, everybody. Thanks for all the questions in the chat. It's been really good to see you there as well. Make sure you subscribe down below. Oh, there's a link. Yep. Okay, cool. Yeah, make sure you subscribe down below. That's the link in the bottom corner. Make sure you're on the YouTube channel. We're trying to make sure the YouTube channel grows. And I know we're on LinkedIn and a few other places. But if you can go to YouTube and subscribe, find us on your favorite podcast platforms, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, all of the usual things. And we'll be here at this same time, same place, possibly.
Maybe.
We're trying to figure out time zone difficulty still. We have been for like a month, but we'll figure it out. So yeah, same time, same place, potentially next week.
Cool.
Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the chat as well, as always.
It's been fun.
A bunch of great questions and comments in there. Speak to you all later.
How about a nice game of chess?
Bye-bye.
I'm going to go watch that thing now.